Welcome. This is an overview of the Brimbox web database interface. When we get to Brimbox, we get to a login screen. Because this is a database, although it's web-based and it is actually a website, it's not a CMS, it's a database program. It's a database framework. So I'm going to log in here, and when we get in login, we get to the Brimbox web database interface. So that's what we're calling as a web database interface, because it's sort of a new concept. So before going into how it works, we'll talk about what it does. So what Brimbox is intended to do is to be for smaller, medium-sized relational databases. It's a step above spreadsheets. It's an alternative to turnkey solutions, especially if you can't find a turnkey solution you want to use. And it's a step below custom databases or enterprise-level databases, which obviously are very difficult and time-consuming to program in most frameworks. So let's talk about a little bit before I go on, again, about the technology. So mainly Brimbox is PHP, and it's built on top of Postgres. So that's the database under it. It's pretty much, it has a little bit of JavaScript, but it's basically, it's based on full page loads, and it's based on PHP and Postgres. Now, we've installed some data just to play around with here, and it's actually the world database that's used as an example in MySQL community, and we've installed it into the Brimbox web database interface. And when we go to the Browse tab, we see what we have as Brimbox, and we have these records, this data that's being returned in record form. It's not columns, it's not rows, but we have these tabs that do things. And we start, and the first 6 tabs along here, Browse through Cascade, are generally for viewing data. So we go to the browse, and this is just, browse by letter, by first letter. It's very simple. We click the P, and we get Pakistan and Panama and Peru and Philippines. And we go to the search tab, and this is sort of like a Google-like thing. You can search, it actually searches all the fields, not just one field. And I'm going to search for Aruba, and we search in Aruba, and it brings up Aruba, and we go to lookup, and the lookup is the standard database thing to look up on based on something. And so we go to name, and I'm just going to type in UN and submit lookup, and we get the things that start with United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, United States, and then United States Minor. But the important thing to understand is that Brimbox is going to save the state. So if you go to the search tab, it's still on Aruba. If you go to the browse tab, it's still on Pakistan, and if you go to lookup tab, it's still on the things that start with UN, and the back button works the same way. So it saves whatever position you were in and last, and it has a whole framework for doing that. It's when you work with a database on the web, you want to save when you're going around it, you want it to save where you were at, or maintain state is what I would call it. And so it does that. So that's one of the most important features of Brimbox. So we're going to go back to the Browse tab, and we're going to talk about these things along the bottom. These are what I call action links, and the ones we're going to talk about is the Details, which takes you into the Details tab, and the Cascade, which takes you into the Cascade tab. And if we look at the Details, it just takes you in here, and it'll tell you that big number right there is population. And if we go to the Cascade tab, it'll just take you right in there, and this is a cascading function, so it takes the Pakistan, all the cities under it, and actually, if you go to the end, it also cascades all the languages. So here are the different languages, Urdu, Sindhi, that are spoken in Pakistan. So that's how the 5 of those 6 tabs. But before going to the View tab, I'm going to talk a little bit. Of course, we have the Edit. So we have a standard input form that works, and we can just tell Pakistan to Pakistani, and we can edit that record. And if we go back to the Browse tab, we find it Pakistani, and we can change it back. And if you wanted to, I'm going to change it back. And if you wanted to add a country, and you can see it pops up with child records in case you want to do that. And if you wanted to just put a new country, and you just reset the form, and it would be a new country you would be putting in. Just add a country. Of course, even a CRUD does that. And But the thing here is we're getting in here. So in a relational situation, you have to find a parent record before adding a child record or a related record. And so we go to view cities, and we go to, and it shows you, it will view the cities, and we can add a city to the Pakistan. It says the parent is Pakistan. And we can do the same thing to languages. So it's relational. And that's where it, if you're storing your data in spreadsheets and you need a relational component, this is. It is a relationally based. Okay, finally we have these last two ones, and the email is right here, and it's actually an inbox for email. It's actually an email inbox that you can get email, and you can have receipts sent here if you're keeping track of things. You can have things emailed to the database. And we have this list functioning, and this turns these lists, and if we turn this to North America, we see that we have a list that's responding now. We have Canada in the North American list, and if we go here back to lookup and we go to list, and I'm going to go to the United States down here, we can just put North America. We can move the United States in there, and then we go to the list and we have North America. So this is all fine and dandy. This is simple, but where Brimbox shines is it's customizable. Okay, and so I'm going to go to the admin panel, and I'm going to go walk through the admin panel a little later, but we're going to just do something in the admin panel now. So we're going to add a module, and we're going to add an analyze module, and we're going to go straight to manage module, and we're going to choose the file, and this is like adding a plugin. It's adding a module, and so we're going to add this module, we're going to install it, and instantly this tab pops up that does this, and we see there's no data coming in. Now you could automate this fully, but I haven't automated it, and since it's a PHP framework, we're just going to put it in the generic functions file. We're going to add a link for that analyze tab. We're going to add a link along the action links, and we're going to do it in this file called BB functions. It's just a generic file in the configuration. And if we go back and we go to the browse, and we go to the home under the browse because we added it for users, we go here and we have this analyze link, so you can just quickly analyze Panama, and it returns all your information. So oftentimes when working in a database, you need a particular view to quickly, like an overview, and so this turns in the country with all its cities and all its languages just in one spot. So that's it. So now I'm just going to walk through the admin tabs very quickly, just to talk about what it does. So we go back. We can have two different admin permissions, and so we go to the setup tab, and this is for super users would have this permission. We can manage lists. We can manage drop downs. Okay, and if we go to the input tab and we go to reset form, we have this drop down here, so that's where you would do that. You can manage your drop downs for your input form there. And we have upload data, so you can bulk upload data. You can upload documents, so this would be like where you save your documentation or any documents of the WordPress. You can also save files. This will actually save files too. You can use this as a file management tool. We have this query alias, and I'm not going to talk about that too much, but this is where you can build reporting queries, or you can just query the database, and it has this subquery alias that helps out. And of course you have translation. This is fully translatable into any language, and you can also translate from English to English. So if we go here to this box controller, we have this queue, and it's called email. And I don't like to call it email. I want to call it inbox because that describes it better for me. And so you can update this and you change it, and now you have inbox there. So you can change all these things to a different language, or you can change them to different things in English, if you want to change it all to Spanish or English. Okay, so that's a translation, and we have this manage users. So this is where we set up our users, and that's stored differently than the database because that's login permissions. And then we have a manage log, and here's where you set up your layouts, and we have it set up for, you can have up to 26 layouts because there's one for each of the English well, actually you can have whatever language has one layout per character. So if your language has more than 26 characters, you can have more than 26 layouts. And this is where you set up your relationship. So we can see that cities, parent relationship, and you can have many-to-many relationships in here too. And that's where you set up your layouts, and then you set up the columns here. And you don't create tables in Brimbox. Brimbox stores all the data in one table. You just have to figure out how to query it. And it is relational. It uses self-joins and subqueries to query the data. So that's where you set up the columns here. And you, of course, if you had to add a column at some point along the way, you could. There's a key system, and it allows for one single key that sometimes will be better per record. And then we have the manage modules, which we did, and a backup restore. So it has this whole admin permission, and you don't have to give a user admin permission. Obviously, you can just eliminate the admin from there, and you have the users. So that's how it sort of works. I wanted to talk about a little bit about the data. So if we go into PHP pgadmin, and Brimbox is not a replacement for a database management tool. It's what I'm calling a web database interface, but it's for the end user. It's for users that are using the database. And if we go in here and we go to the public, these are the tables that Brimbox has. So it has, by default, 8 tables. And you really shouldn't have to add tables. I mean, of course, you can add a table, like if you wanted some reference table outside of the data structure, you could, but you don't need to. But really, everything is basically stored in this one data table. And it's how you do is you query it by row type. So it stores it all in one table. And if I go here to the SQL, we write a quick SQL statement: select star from, and these are pseudo tables or layout, from data table where row type equals 1. So if we do that, it selects that's all the country records. And if we do row type equals 2, it selects all the city records, and of course row 3. So you use these subqueries. These act as tables, and you just treat them as subqueries, or you can actually use the query alias function to do that. And it's like working with 2 different tables, but it stores it all there. So in a way, you have to understand self-joins and subqueries, but in another way, you don't have to go looking through dozens of tables and figuring out weird relationships, because if you do it properly, and Brimbox does, it checks to make sure your relationships are intact, and it keeps everything in one spot so you can all find it. So that's how Brimbox. And finally, I'd like to talk, Brimbox has been around a while. I've been using it with my customers. I have several customers using this. I use them as basically guinea pigs, and they actually like it, and they haven't asked to leave it, and it's been documented. There's lots of documents. All the functions are documented and everything like that, and it has lots of documentation. So you would start here with written installation instructions, and you would start with security, and you would start with relationships. Now, security is it's web security. You have to know what you're doing, and Brimbox is head-on security because it's open source, so there's no like hiding files, or if you find this, you can break it. It's open source, so if it's breakable, you can find it. And we talk finally about relationships, and Brimbox allows 3 types of relationships: what's called parent-child relationships, joint relationships, and related relationships. And here's some sample queries that are given how to use the different relationships. And basically, Brimbox won't fit everything. If your column has more than 50, your table has to have more than 50 columns, it won't work with Brimbox. And there are certain things that it won't. But there are just lots of data situations that will work with Brimbox. And you can figure out how to fit it in. It is like a box that you have to sort of fit things in. However, it is very customizable. It is open source. It's GNU v3, and it can be very powerful if customized and used properly. And you can read about how the community is intended to be built, and it's also intended that you can build products that you can sell on top of it. Of course, it's an open source framework, but it's intended to be something that you can build on and you can make money on as a developer. So that's the overview of the Brimbox web database interface. Thank you for your time.